3, 11, 25, 3 again. Bulbasaur. What the hell is a Bulbasaur?
It's so weird. Why would I be thinking about Pokemon at a time like this?
Yep, definitely a telepath.
But how?
Oh my god, this week's episode of The Flash, that was just amazing. I just think it is the best episode this season so far. Now I know I was comparing last night on my live stream between Season 4 of The Flash and Season 3 of Supergirl, talking about how Supergirl is sort of on the rise while The Flash is in decline. But then I watched this all-new episode of The Flash and I was like, wow, that's just good. That's just different. And if they do manage to keep this quality of this episode going on for the rest of the season, then this season is gonna go out with a bang. It's gonna go out solid. With that being said, welcome back everyone to yet another one of my The Flash videos in my review of Honey, I Shrunk Teen Flash, the 12th episode of the 4th season of the show. So yeah, this episode kinda had it all. I really loved it, every bit of it. I mean, when you think about it, it was heartfelt and touching with both Barry and Big Sur. It was quite funny with Cisco, Ralph, and Harry, but it was amazingly hilarious when it comes to Cecile. Loved Cecile on this episode. She was just great. I can't even complain about Iris on this episode. I mean, if you want my honest opinion, the writing for Iris on this episode and on last week's episode has improved by a lot. And that actually goes to explain what my criticism about Iris is all about. It's about the writing. I love Candace Bannon. I think she's doing a great job with what she's given. It's generally nothing against her. It's nothing against her acting. But it is always something else. It's always about the writing for her character. The writing that could make her character better. When I criticize her character or when I criticize the show in general, I'm criticizing it because I want it to get better. But let's take a closer look at the events of this episode. So the episode gets started with Cecile realizing that she's got powers. And those first couple of scenes with her realizing that she's got powers and with Catlin doing all these tests kind of pose two important questions. The first one is really about the gender of the baby. So is the baby really a girl? Because that could possibly mean that the girl we got to see on the crossover event and on last week's episode might actually be Joe and Cecile's daughter. And that would in return mean that she's not really Dawn Allen. So what did we learn out of this? We learned that the mystery girl is not necessarily Dawn Allen, but we also learned that the pregnancy of Cecile does not necessarily mean that we're getting Daniel West. And hence why over all the arguments in the comments to my videos that this is this or that is that, like it's all been confirmed, I usually maintain a certain set of words, like maybe, possibly, and I think. But Bulbasaur, what the hell is a Bulbasaur? Now that entire scene was extremely funny with every thought that Cecile kinda picked out of the minds of everyone around her. But there was also the fact that this entire scene kinda posed a very important question. What is the source of Cecile's metahuman abilities? The telepathic abilities that Cecile is having are not because the baby is a metahuman, but rather because of the pregnancy. And we pretty much got out of that scene and out of the entire episode without knowing what that actually means. Like, what is the source of her abilities? But at the very least, we do know she wasn't on the bus, which we kinda knew already. She did not inherit a mystic heirloom totem from one of her family members, which is basically a reference to Vixen. And she was not abducted by aliens, which as far as I can think of, the only aliens these guys know of are the Dominators, so this could be a reference to just about that. But to get done with the topic of Cecile, there were a lot of other scenes that were just as hilarious and just as funny. And there were other scenes that were quite heartfelt with her as well. That final scene of the episode, that was quite heartfelt, quite romantic as well. The kind of thing she did there in order to put Joe at ease. I liked that. I just loved the writing for both Joe and Cecile all across the board on this episode. The two of them together kind of gave us a perfect trifecta. Drama, romance, and comedy. That was really good. But let's not forget that we did get a reference as well to one of the worst moments on the season with the couples therapist. I mean, this one was way funnier and way more interesting, especially with that grocery list moment. I just found that one to be a whole lot of funny. I did dislike how the whole couples therapist situation came up in a manner that insinuated that she kinda helped Barry and Iris on the second episode of the season. I mean, that entire reference, it was kind of unnecessary. It kinda reminded me of one of the worst sequences this season so far. Well, granted that sequence was kinda funny on episode 2, it was still kinda crude in a manner of speaking. I mean, Barry went to make fun over there of the death of his mother and of his father. That was not necessary back then, and it wasn't at all funny. The motivation for Barry has always been about all this drama in his life, all the pain and all the hurt, and the fact that all of this was just done to make Iris shine as a character and not in a way that all fans liked was just one of the dumbest things that this season had to do so far. Now there was also the other part of this episode, the part about the story that's happening in prison with Barry and Big Sur, and this story kinda tied in with the villain of the episode, the one who's been wreaking havoc all over Central City. Now I'm finding that kind of annoyingly coincidental. I did not like the fact at all that they are looking for this villain at the same time that Barry is looking for him, but for totally different reasons. That is just too much coincidence for my taste. But if there are any flaws to this episode, I think it's just this one. Nothing more, nothing less. But anyway, the entire dynamic between Big Sur and Barry was really heartfelt and all the way through. I did love this whole fatherly emotions that Big Sur has towards Barry, and this whole looking up to Big Sur as someone who's supporting him, helping him, saving his butt inside prison. That was all really good. This entire thing about Hope, the Shawshank Redemption reference, everything about this whole arc, that was really, really well written as well. Loved it all the way, and I just felt that the first thought that came to my mind after watching last week's episode was completely right. Big Sur and his addition to the series this season is by far one of the best things that the Flash writers have done.
You know, I made you a promise and I let you down.
You damn idiot. You did not let me down. Forgot what hope felt like. It's not a bad thing.
But speaking of the villain of this episode, Dwarfstar, this entire episode and its title were a reference to Honey, I Shrunk the Kids, the 1989 movie. Dwarfstar in the comics though is completely different. I mean, the abilities are still the same, but as a criminal, he's way more in the comics than just this simple guy trying to grow this set of collectibles. In the comics, he's actually more of a serial killer and a rapist, but I kind of understand why the series kind of did him differently. I mean, there is a certain limit of darkness that the Flash is willing to go to. This kind of criminal would have just been way too dark for the series.
Are we doing okay? Are we doing okay? Does it look like we're doing okay? We're 2 inches tall, Caitlin!
Yeah, I'm like Cisco size now. Is that how you always see the world?
Oh, that's really funny, man. I guess your body just finally shrunk down to a size that's proportional to your brain.
But there were finally two things to note here. Barry took Big Sur to Jiaju in China. He got the movie ending. That was really one other good thing on this episode. It ended on both a happy and a sad note. Now the happy note is about Big Sur, but the sad note is about Barry himself. So early on this season, I was kind of expecting that Warden Wolf was working for Clifford DeVoe, but instead he is, in a manner of speaking, working with Aminette Black. He's just selling all these metahumans to her. And now the Flash is the offer on the table. Now based on the trailer for next week's episode, we're actually gonna be seeing an escape arc. But I'm also expecting that we're gonna be seeing Cecile be a great asset in the middle of all of this, somehow figuring out the situation that Barry is in within Iron Heights. Now that being said, there is one final order of business for this video before it's over and done with. And that is pretty much all about that entire Flash v Supergirl thing that I was discussing on last night's live stream. So what I was doing there was basically make this comparison between both Girl Power episodes on Supergirl Season 3 and The Flash Season 4. Now The Flash is a great series. No, it was a great series. It started its first couple of seasons so great, did a great job over there, and comparing them to the first couple of seasons as Supergirl, The Flash wins by way too far. But then when you decide to look at the state of decline of The Flash, at the rate of decline to be exact, it's really declining so fast this season if we do ignore this week's and last week's episode. But when you look at Supergirl this season, it's improving at an extremely high rate. And I'm not just complaining about one character or the other, or the writing for one character or the other, I'm complaining about the writing in general. Again, ignoring this week's episode and that of last week. So pretty much the villain of The Flash sucks. We just had extremely high hopes of the Thinker, but he was not anywhere as good as we thought he would be. Rain, on the other hand, is a great villain. Rain is a very well-developed villain. She's a villain you love when you look at Samantha, a sympathetic villain when you're still looking at her, but when you go to the Rain persona of the character, you're like hating her guts. That is just good development in my opinion. I mean, you're watching this character, hating her at one moment, and then loving her at the very next moment. That's the kind of engaging writing that The Flash kind of needs. The kind of engaging writing that we get to see on episodes 11 and 12 of the season. And it isn't really just the villain of The Flash. The villains of Arrow are horridly written. They have a great actor like Michael Emerson to play the role of Caden James, yet the writing for him is extremely sloppy. It's really saddening. And even relationships on Supergirl this season, they are written in a much better manner. I mean, they're no more putting the relationship in focus and then building the rest of the series around it. They're doing it differently. They're making sure that the relationship is part of the story rather than the entire story. But circling back to those two girl power episodes, which when put side by side are very perfect for the comparison of both series. So let's first go through the Flash episode. So on episode 3 of The Flash this season, we had Felicity, Iris, Cecile, and Catlin. Now Felicity, in and out of herself, was a big problem with this episode. She was not funny, she was laughing at her own jokes, the writing for her was just terrible. And the same goes for Iris. I'm not talking about the funny or the jokes, but I'm talking about the fact that they were trying so hard to just make her shine even more as this leader of everything, the know-it-all that Iris has been all the way up until episode 9. I've got to admit though, this entire Iris situation has been totally improving since the show returned for its back half. Now on that episode though, the writing for both Cecile and Catlin was pretty okay. I was fine with that part. And I'm not a Snowberry fan, by the way, if you would think that based on my comments. Now even with Supergirl, I'm once again sure that they wanted to emphasize this whole girl power thing. We care about girl power. Doesn't matter why, doesn't matter the reasons. What matters is how they did it. And what happened there is they did it with elegance and they did it with class. And they did it really smart. They actually gave us multiple objectives to this episode. So they wanted to develop the relationship between Kara and Imra, and they succeeded at that. They wanted as well to develop the relationship between Kara and Sai, and they did succeed at that. And they wanted to uncover more about Rain, and they did succeed at that as well. We ended up finding out that there are two more world killers out there, Purity and Pestilence. Granted that I've got a lot of complaints when it comes to the writing and the acting actually in this case of Amy Jackson, the one who portrays Imra Ardeen, but nonetheless, the episode in its entirety beats Girls' Night Out from The Flash. The dialogue was really good, the writing was really good, the storytelling was really good, and the story itself was really good, and most of the acting actually was pretty good. Now I did not really get the time to review Supergirl this week, so I really apologize about that. But that being said, let me know in the comments what you thought of this comparison, what you thought of episode 12 of The Flash, and as well, let me know what you thought of episode 12 of Supergirl. Now you can let me know if you liked this video by dropping it a much appreciated like, and if that were to be the case, it is also much appreciated if you subscribe and enable notifications for my future videos. Until I see you next time though, thank you all for tuning in and have a great day.